All right, welcome back, deep divers. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into some seriously important research.
Oh, yeah?
About how much CO2 our planet can actually absorb naturally.
Right.
You know, through things like trees and plants.
Right.
And we're going to be looking at a paper from the Weather Journal.
Okay.
And get this, they've been using data.
Interesting.
From the famous Keeling Curve.
Oh, wow.
You know, the one that's been tracking CO2 levels.
Right, yeah.
Since way back in the 1950s.
Wow, since the 50s.
Yeah, a long time.
Okay.
But here's the question.
Okay.
What if this natural ability to soak up all the CO2 is actually getting worse?
Uh-oh.
Like, what if the planet's carbon capture program is just failing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what this paper is suggesting. And some of the findings are pretty alarming.
Oh, no.
So first off, can you give us a really quick explanation of how this natural CO2 absorption actually works?
Absolutely. So imagine just like the vast forests across the northern hemisphere.
Okay.
Like giant lungs.
Okay.
Taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
During the summer.
Okay.
And so through photosynthesis, they're pulling in massive amounts of CO2.
Okay.
Effectively cleaning the air.
Right. So it's like the planet has this built-in air purifier.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how does the Keeling Curve show us this happening?
Well, that's the fascinating part.
Okay.
So every year the Keeling Curve shows a dip.
Okay.
In CO2 levels.
Yeah.
That lines up perfectly with the northern hemisphere summer.
Right.
It's like the Earth is inhaling and holding its breath for a while.
So for years, this natural process has been helping us deal with all this CO2 that we're pumping into the atmosphere, right?
Yeah, it's been crucial in offsetting some of the emissions that we generate as humans.
Okay. But now this research is saying that the amount of CO2 being absorbed is actually going down.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's the discovery.
Oh, wow.
And so they meticulously analyzed this Keeling Curve data and found that peak absorption actually happened back in 2008.
Oh, wow. So it was actually getting better at some point.
Yeah, it was improving for a while.
Wow.
Back in the 60s.
Okay.
It was increasing by about 0.8% every year.
Okay. That's a lot.
It's a good boost.
Yeah. Yeah.
But fast forward to now, it's actually decreasing by 0.25%.
Annually.
Every year.
Wow. So it's a huge shift.
Yeah, it's a dramatic shift.
And what's causing this?
Well,
at us?
Well, they point to a lot of factors in the paper.
Okay.
Many of which are related to human activities.
Like what?
Okay, well, think about the increase in wildfires.
Okay.
Especially those raging across the northern hemisphere during the summer.
Yeah.
And then you've got these intense heat waves.
Mm-hmm.
You've got prolonged droughts.
Right.
Devastating floods, severe storms.
Like all these extreme weather events.
It's a domino effect of all these climate-related disasters.
And they're all getting worse.
Exactly. They're all becoming more frequent and intense.
Right.
And then on top of that, you've got the spread of pests and diseases that are wiping out these huge areas of forest.
Right.
And so this loss of biodiversity just weakens the planet's ability to regulate itself.
Right.
Including its ability to absorb our carbon emissions.
So what does this all mean if less CO2 is being absorbed naturally?
Right.
What happens?
Well, simply put, CO2 levels are going to rise even faster than they already are.
Right.
And that means the climate change is going to accelerate.
Can you give me an example of what that might look like?
Sure. So the paper states that if this decline in carbon absorption hadn't started, the current rate of CO2 increase, which is about 2.5 parts per million per year, would be closer to 1.9.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that 0.6 makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference on a planetary scale.
Wow. So even that seemingly small change in absorption has this massive ripple effect.
Yeah, it really underscores just how interconnected and fragile these systems are.
Yeah, this is sounding pretty dire.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway here?
Well, the paper's conclusion is pretty stark.
Okay.
We can no longer rely on nature
to
clean up our mess.
Right.
As much as it used to.
So we can't just assume that the planet will take care of itself.
No, unfortunately not.
Okay.
And in fact, they calculated that to make up for this decline in natural absorption.
Yeah.
We need to decrease global emissions by an additional 0.3%.
Every year?
Every single year.
Wow, that's a lot to ask, considering we're not even on track to reduce emissions now.
That's the reality.
Yeah, and it sounds like the climate crisis and this biodiversity crisis are totally linked.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, we can't address one without the other.
Exactly.
Okay. Deep divers, hang in there with us.
Yes.
We're going to take a quick pause.
Okay. To refresh your drinks and be right back to continue this deep dive into the interconnected crisis facing our planet.
Okay.
And more importantly, what we can do about it.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back, and I don't know about you, but my brain is doing a bit of a climate change overload.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in, but before we spiral into existential dread, let's shift gears and talk about what we can do about this.
Yeah.
Get ready for some action items.
Okay, well, the good news is, while the research paints a pretty sobering picture, it also gives us some really clear direction.
Okay, so what are we talking about here?
Well, remember all those factors we discussed?
Yeah.
The ones driving this decline in the planet's ability to absorb CO2?
Right. Wildfires, extreme weather, biodiversity loss?
Exactly.
They're all flashing like warning lights in my head right now.
Well, think of it this way. Addressing those underlying issues isn't just about protecting nature itself.
It's also essential for tackling climate change.
Right, so it's like hitting two birds with one stone.
Exactly.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
Okay.
Give me some examples.
Okay.
How do we actually protect nature and fight climate change at the same time?
Well, there's a growing movement around what are called nature-based solutions.
Okay.
Things like restoring ecosystems.
Okay.
Protecting biodiversity.
Okay.
Managing forests responsibly.
So restoring a forest isn't just about planting trees.
Right.
It's about creating this whole ecosystem that can thrive.
Exactly.
Can pull carbon from the atmosphere.
Yeah, and it goes beyond forests.
Okay.
Think about coastal wetlands.
Okay.
Those are incredible carbon sinks.
Right.
Or regenerative agriculture.
Yeah.
Which focuses on building healthy soil that can store tons of carbon.
Okay, so this is starting to sound a little bit more hopeful.
Yeah.
It feels like there are actual things that we can do.
There are.
But how do we scale these solutions up to a global level?
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
Right? It requires this massive shift in thinking and action.
Okay.
We need governments, businesses, and individuals to all step up and play their part.
So it's not just about scientists doing research and publishing papers.
Yeah.
It's about real-world change.
It's about real-world change, absolutely.
So what does that look like?
Well,
how do we get those big systems to change?
Well, it starts with getting involved in the political process.
Okay.
Advocating for policies that support sustainability.
Okay.
And holding our leaders accountable.
So we need to make it clear that climate action is a priority.
Yes.
And we need solutions that address both of these crises.
Exactly. You can't solve one without the other.
Yeah, they're intertwined.
They're completely intertwined.
And there are all these solutions emerging that address both.
For sure.
Like what?
We'll take renewable energy, for example.
Okay.
Transitioning to solar, wind, and other clean energy sources.
Yeah.
Not only reduces emissions, but it also lessens our impact on natural habitats.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
And what about all that talk about nature-based solutions?
Yeah.
What are some ways that we can support those efforts?
Supporting reforestation and afforestation projects is a big one.
Okay.
And protecting existing forests is crucial too.
Okay.
We can also support initiatives to create wildlife corridors.
Okay.
Protect endangered species.
Yeah.
And promote sustainable agriculture.
So it's not just about planting trees.
Right.
It's about restoring these whole ecosystems.
Yes.
And don't underestimate the power of just raising awareness.
That's right.
Talking about these issues with your friends, your family, your colleagues.
It can have a huge ripple effect.
In supporting organizations that are working on the front lines of conservation and climate action.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like we have a toolbox full of solutions. Yes. We just need to start using them.
Exactly. And it's not just up to scientists and policymakers. It's up to all of us.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
Everything is connected.
It really is.
What we do to nature, we do to ourselves.
Precisely. It's time to stop thinking in silos.
Okay.
We need integrated solutions that tackle climate change, biodiversity loss, and social inequality.
All at the same time.
At the same time.
This is starting to sound like a pretty big to-do list.
It is a big to-do list.
But it's exciting, too.
Yeah.
Like maybe there is a way forward, a path that leads to a more sustainable future.
There is. And the solutions are out there.
Yeah.
We have the knowledge, the technology, and the ingenuity to make it happen.
So the question is, do we have the will?
That's the question.
This reminds me of that famous quote, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it."
That's so true. We can't wait for someone else to fix this.
Right.
We all have a role to play.
Right.
Whether it's making changes in our own lives, supporting organizations that are doing good work, or using our voices to demand change from our leaders.
Okay. Deep divers. I know this is a lot to process.
Yeah.
We've gone from feeling a bit doomed to slightly hopeful.
Yeah.
And maybe a little overwhelmed again.
It's a roller coaster.
So let's take a moment to just sit with all this information.
Yep.
We'll be right back to explore some specific actions we can take, both individually and collectively, to move forward.
Sounds good.
Okay, deep divers. We're back, and I'm ready to translate all this talk about interconnectedness and nature-based solutions into some concrete action, because honestly, I think we've all had enough of doom scrolling the planet's problems. So let's talk solutions. What can we actually do?
That's the spirit. And you're right. It's time to move beyond awareness and into action. And the good news is there are things we can do at every level, from individual choices to global policy shifts.
Okay, so let's start small.
Right.
What can our listeners do in their own lives to make a difference?
Well, reducing our carbon footprint is always a good starting point. We're talking about being mindful of the energy we use, choosing sustainable transportation options, and even making conscious choices about the food we eat.
So those small, everyday choices actually add up. It's not just about grand gestures.
Exactly. Every little bit counts. Think of it like this. If everyone made one small change, the collective impact would be huge. But individual action is only one part of the equation. We also need to push for systemic change.
Okay, so what does that look like? How do we get those big systems to change?
It starts with getting involved in the political process, advocating for policies that support sustainability and holding our leaders accountable. We need to make it clear that climate action is a priority, and we need solutions that address both the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis.
You've said it before, and I'm starting to really get it. We can't solve one without the other. They're intertwined.
Precisely. And there are so many exciting solutions emerging that address both take renewable energy, for example, transitioning to solar, wind, and other clean energy sources, not only reduces emissions, but it also lessens our impact on natural habitats. It's a win-win.
And what about all that talk about nature-based solutions? What are some tangible ways we can support those efforts?
There are tons of ways to get involved. Supporting reforestation and afforestation projects is a big one, and protecting existing forests is crucial too. We can also support initiatives to create wildlife corridors, protect endangered species, and promote sustainable agriculture.
So it's not just about planting trees, it's about restoring entire ecosystems, right?
Yes, and don't underestimate the power of simply raising awareness. Talking about these issues with your friends, family, and colleagues can have a ripple effect. And supporting organizations that are working on the front lines of conservation and climate action is huge.
This all makes so much sense. It's like we have a toolbox full of solutions. We just need to start using them. And it's not just up to scientists and policymakers. It's up to all of us.
You got it. And the more we engage with these solutions, the more hope we create. Remember that glimmer of hope we talked about earlier? Well, action is what fuels that hope.
So true. All right. Deep divers. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. We've explored the problem. We've discussed the solutions. Now it's time to act. Choose one thing, big or small, that you can do to make a difference, and do it and then share it. Talk about it. Inspire others to do the same, because together we can turn this ship around. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.